Okay, everyone, I'm going to come to you with my scratchy voice to show you how to get your settings right in Cronometer. Make sure the volume's all the way up. So I've logged into my account on Cronometer and I've entered some data. This isn't a full day's intake, but it'll be enough to get the gist of what we're working with. So here's what you can do to make sure that things are as simple as possible to get your settings correct. So go to the Settings tab right here, and we're going to start with Profile. So you probably did all of this stuff before to start your analysis. We're just going to make sure that it's all correct. You don't have to change everything or anything if it is correct. I just want to make sure that you can monitor or look through this and make sure that it's all right. So enter in your sex, your date of birth. Mine was wrong. Not that month is going to make that big of a difference, but anyway, for BMR, do go ahead and select basal metabolic rate. Do go ahead and select Mifflin-St. Jeor equation. And then activity level, I recommend sedentary or lightly active. You're welcome to choose higher levels of activity, but just be aware that in my experience, that tends to cause calorie goals to be way higher than what they really need to be for weight maintenance and especially for weight loss. So just as long as you're comfortable with that. And then do put in your current weight and your height. Remember, I can never see this information, so don't worry about privacy. And if you want a weight goal, then you can go ahead and put that in here. But again, that's just for your personal use. You don't have to, and I can't see this information. So next we're going to go over to targets section here. And we're going to make sure everything is all correct in the macro and nutrient targets section of the journal. So we do want to show the calorie summary in the diary. It's just a different way of looking at things. Important here, the default, I believe, is to track net carbohydrates with sugar alcohols. That's not important for the purposes of what we're learning in this class. So I'd like you to change your settings to total carbohydrates. And then I'd like you to set your macro targets using this particular setting here, macro ratios. I'm not encouraging you to get on a ketogenic diet. Most of you, I think that would be inappropriate. And the fixed values is going to vary based on a whole host of things. So this ratio is going to be the best. And what we're doing here is kind of hitting a very basic thing. This is all the acceptable macronutrient distribution ratio. So 50% carbohydrate, 20% protein, and 30% fat. If you know from your own personal experience that you want a different value, that's totally fine. You can change it here. Then we'll scroll down and look at nutrient targets. And under the General tab, this will make more sense when we look at the analysis piece. Under the General tab, we'd like to see energy, but we're not going to look at any of the rest of this stuff, so don't worry about tracking that information. Under vitamins, we want everything selected except biotin, because when you select it, you'll notice it says that there's not enough information in the database about food or biotin in foods, so the data that it's going to give you is not going to be accurate, so there's not a very good reason to track it. For vitamin A, we're just going to track vitamin A in general. We're not going to go to the depth of looking at all of the different forms of vitamin A, which you can here, so make sure that these are unchecked. We will look at C, D, and E. We won't look at the 3 different forms of vitamin E. We will look at vitamin K. So make sure that all of these are visible on your profile. For minerals, we're going to look at everything except for chromium and iodine, and that's because, once again, they don't have a lot of information about chromium content of foods, so no sense in looking at it if it's not going to be accurate. Moving on to carbohydrates, what we're going to look at here, So what we want you to check visible in carbohydrates is carbs and fiber. We're going to try to look at added sugars. I did this over the summer, and there wasn't a lot of information in this column. I imagine as more companies adapt the new food or nutrition labels that this is going to have some more useful info. But right now, I'm not sure that it will. We're just going to experiment with it. And then in lipids, everything should be visible, which I believe is the default. So go ahead and make sure that that's the case. For protein, all we really are going to look at in this class is protein. These are all of the individual amino acids. If you would like to evaluate your intake of each individual or certain specific amino acids on your own time, that is totally fine. But the assignments that you turn in for this class, I request that you do not have these selected as visible because it's just visually a lot more challenging to analyze when there's so much extra data. So that's how you get your settings set. If you want to connect to a device for your personal purposes, that's totally fine. But now you've got your profile and your diary set up. So if you go back to this page and scroll down, then you'll see all the changes we made. There will be a lot fewer boxes ticked, or a lot fewer options with data for you to look at. So that will make it less messy. Thanks for following these directions.